Welcome to my Velociraptor Research Shack. Before we begin, here are some questions that you might want to consider while we go through. First, how high at the hip was the Velociraptor? 2. Where were most of the fossils found? 3. What kind of animals would hunt Velociraptors? 4. What kind of dinosaur do the Jurassic Park and World movies depict more closely when referring to the Velociraptor? 5. How many teeth did the Velociraptor feature? Now then, without further ado, let's begin with my very, very loud keyboard. The Velociraptor was 6.8 feet long, 1.6 feet high at the hip, and its leg and neck length, while I couldn't find the exact measurements from the pictures and from various websites, it looks to be like the legs are about a foot long while the neck is only a few inches long. The legs also ended with 3 sharp claws, 3 inches in size, and one of them pointing directly up. Some of the stats I couldn't find for the Velociraptor, it seems that they're very mixed between either very small and feathery, more bird-like creatures, or fairly mid-sized, leathery, scaly creatures. It's kind of weird, so I just kind of more or less assumed some of these. Over here is the Velociraptor with the Jurassic Park version of the Velociraptor and the supposedly scientific version of the Velociraptor, although I believe that scientific reconstruction is actually incorrect. There are better images. But, no, the Jurassic Park Velociraptors aren't actually like the actual Velociraptors. In fact, the Velociraptor from the Jurassic Park movies were more culminated through the use of different dinosaurs. In fact, the Jurassic Park Velociraptors were more closely resembling to the Utah Raptors, which I have a picture of down here. This is the picture of a Utah Raptor, not a Velociraptor. And that's what they more closely resemble. They're not that big, they're just like mid-sized, human-sized, right? Next things next. The Velociraptor had a long and smooth head, 26 to 28 teeth in upper and lower jaws. They were serrated and very small teeth, and while I couldn't find the actual size, they looked to be around 1 to 2 inches or less in length. The tail makes up the better part of the Velociraptor's length, its most prominent feature, and it allows them to balance while the Velociraptor is running around. Since they're very small and very, very fast creatures, usually running around, they need that extra weight balance, considering that most of their weight seems to be front-facing without the tail. Most of these Velociraptor fossils have also been found in the Gobi Desert of all forms. Since I couldn't find any other Velociraptor fossil locations, I assume that most of the fossils, from eggs to actual fossils themselves, like the bones, I assume they've all been found in the Gobi Desert, which I believe is in Asia. I'm not sure. These raptors lived in the late Cretaceous period. They were carnivores, and they spent most of their time running around and hunting, which their small size helped them excel at. So, with that, the Velociraptors were very cowardly, fairly defenseless animals, and due to their size. This makes them easy pickings for anything willing to chase them down. However, since they were so small, only slightly bigger animals would. With that, the anatomy over here depicts the Velociraptor skeleton. It's strange because it's either fairly mid-sized leathery animals or very small bird-like animals, and I couldn't find any anatomies depicting the more recent studies of the velociraptor, so instead this was as good as I could do. Um, but you can see how the legs and the tail were, well, first things first, the legs were very muscular, allowing them to run very, very quickly, as well as their claws being very long and very sharp, as well as being curved, helping them tear through uh, pretty much anything, really. Its teeth were very, very small, very slim, backwards shaped and serrated, and they were fairly spaced out, not as close together as featured here since the picture is compressed, but they were fairly spaced out, which is why there's not really a whole lot of teeth in the velociraptor's mouth. It's also a fairly small head, so there's that. And the tail was very, very bony. The reason for this was to allow the tail to be very weighted instead of being very maneuverable. These tails really didn't move a whole lot, which is why there's just a whole lot of bone in there. And without further ado, that should be everything, I think. Thank you all for listening, and I guess on to the next presentation.